My name is Noah Lee. I am the head of product consulting here at dealer.com. And what we're going to cover today is marketing in the cookieless future. Now, you've probably heard the cookieless future term before and wondered, well, what does this even have to do with me? And I'm here to inform you that it means a whole lot. The fundamentals of the advertising ecosystem online are changing in a big way. We're seeing the sunset of third-party cookies and updates in Apple's iOS system, preventing most advertisers from tracking shoppers in the traditional manner and really forcing everyone to kind of change things up. So we're going to cover a lot today, and really what my goal is here is for you to leave this presentation with a really good understanding of how data is used to target shoppers, what's happening in this space, and what you can do. So we'll cover, data and marketing basics to begin with. We'll go over what's happening right now. We'll talk about what you can do to kind of come out on top, and we'll go over what's going on with privacy, which is really the driving factor behind a lot of these changes. So let's jump right into it, and let's talk about data basics. Really, first things first, the more you know about your customer, the better you can serve them, right? Knowledge is power for real. And this is, applicable in the real life too. If you've got a customer coming into the store and you know a little bit about them, you can serve them even better and increase the likelihood that you're going to sell or service their vehicle, right? They've got a relationship with you. And that's what's going on in the digital realm, right? You know a little bit more about your customers, the more effectively you can advertise to them. And it's pretty simple, right? In a digital world, you learn more about your consumers by the data you have access to. And it's pretty simple, right? Hey, more data equals more and better info. But, having a lot of data is a start, but it really isn't everything. It's really kind of what you do with that data that matters. So it reminds me of a phrase that I can't, credit it to anybody in particular, but, it goes, hey, there's an overabundance of data and a lack of information. Really, data is just ones and zeros, it's numbers. And it's overwhelming, especially in the digital world. We're talking about billions upon trillions of, facts and figures out there. And if you don't have a way to turn it into information, it doesn't mean anything. Information is data that's actionable, something that you can tell a story with or take an action with, effectively. So you've got to ask yourself, hey, can you turn data into actionable information? At the end of the day, is all this data that you have access to, your sales data, your consumer data, can you turn it into actionable information that effectively drives your business forward? So let's talk about actionable information in the automotive space, specifically with regards to digital marketing. So vehicle of interest. If we know what somebody's interested in buying, we can effectively show them ads for that particular vehicle. Their propensity to buy. So how likely is that shopper to buy in the next 30, 60, 90 days, right? That can influence how often you're showing somebody an ad. Their price range. Maybe we don't know what their vehicle of interest is, but we have an idea of, the body style and the price range. Well, then you can line up the vehicles that match that and start showing them ads. Their current vehicle, if they have a 3-row crossover, that's important information that you can use to effectively target them. And their previous browsing history. What are they looking at across the internet? That's all actionable information that you can use to effectively target them with your advertising. So let's talk about what the heck is happening with data in 2021. There's a lot of big changes happening right now. So we got to start it off by talking about cookies, okay? And we're not talking about this delicious treat that you can have any time of day or at 2 in the morning, right? We're talking about the little pieces of code that websites install on your computer to track your behavior. And there's actually a couple of different types of cookies that serve different functions and perform differently. So what we're going to focus on are 2 different types, right? First-party cookies and third-party cookies. So let's talk about the difference. So a first-party cookie, they're owned by the website you visit, and they don't follow you across the web. So somebody visits your website, for example, you install a first-party cookie on that consumer's device. And you can see what they're doing on your website, right? So how long they've spent, what pages they've viewed, what actions they've taken. But once they leave your website, you're no longer tracking them. That's first-party cookie, and really first-party data. Okay, that's going to be important later on in this presentation when we talk about the differences between first-party and third-party cookies. So third-party cookies, right, this is actually the backbone of the modern advertising ecosystem, and really they come from someplace other than the owner of the website you visit. So the most relevant example that I can think of here is the Facebook tracking pixel. It's everywhere. It's on pretty much every website out there. And it's not owned by those websites, it's owned by Facebook, right? And here's the thing, is it can track you across multiple sites. So you visit one site, you visit another, it's tracking you across those multiple sites and gathering your data. And really, like I said before, it is the primary means for advertisers to gather that data on potential customers and really kind of allow them to start turning that data into information. Now, why does this matter? Why do we care about first-party cookies versus third-party cookies? It sounds like third-party cookies are really the best thing possible, right? It's tracking people across the web. We can see everything that they're doing. This is what we want to use, right? Well, there's a big change, right? Third-party cookies are now getting blocked in larger and larger numbers. Check it out. So really every major browser is either blocking or on the path to blocking third-party cookies by default. So we can actually zoom into this here and check it out. So you can see actually about 60% of users are now untrackable through third-party cookies. So Safari and Firefox were the first ones to start blocking third-party cookies by default. And pretty soon Chrome is going to, actually in 2023. Originally they were going to do it in 2022, but they bumped it out to 2023. So the thing is, it's not just cookies that are taking a beating. So we're seeing 60% of shoppers not able to be tracked by traditional means or the old ways of doing things. But let's look at what's going on in the mobile space, right? So Apple, right? We all know Apple, right? They called in the airstrike on cross-app tracking with iOS 14. So cross-app tracking is basically this. So let's use Facebook as an example. You've got the Facebook app on your phone. It's tracking literally everything that your phone does. So what apps you're using, what your text messages are, where you are located, right? It's tracking you wherever you go and what you're doing with that phone anywhere and at any time. What Apple is doing is allowing shoppers to block that tracking. You have to opt in to allow these apps to track you. And this is a big deal. Big numbers behind this, right? Check it out. There are 113 million iPhone users in the US. And that makes up 47% of all smartphone users. It's a big deal, right? And mobile traffic makes up 54% of all online activity. So if we dive into this a little bit deeper, only 4% of iOS users are opting into this cross-app tracking. After this update that Apple pushed out, people are getting these little notifications from their apps from Facebook saying, hey, we'd love to gather your data across different apps. Would you allow us to do that? Only 4% of people are saying, yeah, go ahead. Most people, 96%, are opting out of that. They are like, no, I don't want you to track what I'm doing. So what that means is another 28% of users have really dropped off the radar of traditional data capture. That's a lot of people and a lot of data that is no longer available. So you got to ask yourself, why? Why is this all happening? Why is this incredible resource of data suddenly going away? Well, it's pretty simple, really. It's increased privacy concerns. We've all had the situation where, we went and met with a friend. We started talking about something, I don't know, toaster waffles, right? And then all of a sudden, you see on Facebook ads for toaster waffles and you think, hey, that's kind of weird. Well, a lot of folks took that to the next level and started really complaining about the invasion of their private conversations, their activity, all this stuff, right? Increased privacy concerns. More and more people are concerned about this. And also we're seeing an increase in ad blocking tech. These ad blocker add-ins on the various browsers blocking that data collection. So you've got to ask yourself, hey, what does this all mean? what does it mean for me? What's going to happen, right? It's pretty simple. So we'll talk about the various ad channels and how they're being affected. First of all, traditional retargeting, right, which is powered by third-party cookies, is really going away for many, right? If you don't have a way to track shoppers outside of a third-party cookie and you're retargeting, well, you're going to have a smaller and smaller pool of potential customers to show your ads to because you're not going to be able to identify them. So there has to be a different way to track those shoppers and identify them. The other thing is, Facebook's third-party pixel is going to become less reliable because it's getting blocked at a higher and higher rate. And also, Facebook's cross-app tracking capabilities are going to shrink dramatically. Now, Facebook's investing in some new technology that is supposed to protect privacy, yet collect consumer data and profile them using a bunch of different ways of doing it, but they're not there yet. So that's why we saw that kind of big shakedown between Apple and Facebook. Facebook took out a full-page ad in, I think it was the New York Times, talking about how this update to iOS was a huge blow to small businesses. Really, what it was a huge blow to Facebook's bottom line, and they're figuring out ways to get around it right now. We're also seeing, topic-based display. That's going to become less accurate and more expensive for many because you've got a smaller pool of potential shoppers that you're bidding on, and it's less accurate because you don't know as much about them. So you've got to figure out a different way of identifying all those shoppers out there and customizing your ads for them. Now, Google, right? We talked about how they're updating their browsers to block third-party cookies by default by 2023. Well, they're actually going to be pushing out a new technology to track shoppers and identify them. It's called Flocks. And really what it is, it's a better way to anonymize data, yet profile users, and it's done at the browser level. So it's a way to change things up and better protect consumers, but it's not quite ready yet. Originally, Google was actually going to be doing this big change in 2022, yet enough people kind of freaked out and got really concerned about this lack of data, this lack of this marketplace, the change, that Google said, you know what, we're going to push this out a year, allow you to kind of catch up, right? Flocks is going to be the way for Google to kind of fill in that third-party cookie gap and better protect consumer privacy. We're also going to see Apple expanding on their advertising ecosystem. I mean, it just makes sense. Apple has access to 47% of the smartphone market and over 113 million users. And all of that data, that is a tremendous resource available to them. And you better believe that they're going to monetize that, right? And they're going to turn that into a new advertising ecosystem, right? They have all this data. They know that advertising is a huge market, and they also have the obligation to increase their shareholder value by tapping into new markets. So they have really this exclusive control of this new marketplace. They're going to go after it. So I would expect to see them announcing a new advertising ecosystem in the next 6 months to a year. So let's talk about some things that you can consider about, how are you going to come out on top in this situation? What advertising agencies are going to be positioned the best for this new reality? So the first thing that we're going to talk about is first-party data. Now, previously, first-party data was kind of thought of as, an also-ran to third-party cookies because it didn't track shoppers across websites. You only got a snapshot of that consumer's behavior. But if you read really any white paper on the future of marketing, it's the advertising agencies that have access to more first-party data are going to be the ones that come out on top, because first-party data is not going to be blocked by these updates with browsers or operating systems, because that website or program owns that data while somebody's using it. They have the right to collect it, and it's not going to be blocked. So if you have more of it, that means you've got a higher volume of data points that you can turn into more accurate information to act on, right? We're also going to talk about what the heck first-party data is. Let's look at different examples of first-party data that you might even have access to. So Number one, your website data. That is first-party data. You have access to that first-party data. People visit your website, you can see what they're doing on it, right? Your CRM data, that is also first-party data, and it's really valuable. You've got customer names, records, their behavior, your log of your communications with them, right? That's really valuable first-party data. Another source of first-party data, your DMS data. Once again, you get names, addresses, phone numbers, transaction records, so you know what people, what vehicles people own. That's really powerful stuff that you can utilize. We also have tier 1 data. So when people visit, say, Toyota.com, well, guess what? Toyota owns that data. And hopefully, we're going to see OEMs start to share that data with their dealerships so they can accurately target those in-market shoppers. And we're seeing that in, certain OEMs doing that already. So like I said before, really the ad agencies that have access to the most first-party data will have the biggest advantage. Because that third-party data pool has shrunk so dramatically, the only way to make up for it is a huge resource of first-party data, right? So we got to think about that, right? You can kind of think of it this way, right? It's like a puzzle. Some are going to have all the pieces to the puzzle and be able to create this really great picture of those shoppers, whereas others might get 25% of the pieces of the puzzle and create kind of what a picture looks like, or maybe even 50%. And so they're going to have a somewhat clear view, but not the total picture. Okay, so really, dealers, you can approach this challenge in a few different ways. Right? I'm going to lay out 3 different ways. Number one is manually provide your vendors with your first-party data. So here are a couple of examples, right? Providing transaction records from your DMS to an advertiser to create audiences. So you know what people own, you know where they're located, creating an audience from that data. Or, we're actually seeing dealers sending their customer addresses to their local cable provider to show customized ads based on addresses. Cable companies can do this. So if we know somebody at 22 Jump Street owns an Audi, maybe show them some Audi ads on that TV. Pretty cool stuff. Option 2, I think this is where majority of the industry is going to go, is advertisers purchasing first-party data to create their own audiences. So there's going to be these marketplaces that are basically going to aggregate first-party data from all of these various sources to create new audiences that then can be resold. Now, the challenge here is you've got to look into how fresh is that data, right? Is it constantly being updated? How accurate is it? And are these new ad channels, right, going to accept these data audiences? So we're going to see that happen, but it's kind of going to be the Wild West. And then we're going to see option 3, whoops, there we go. And that's your advertising partner already having access to a wealth of first-party data. So maybe they're part of an ecosystem of companies that are collecting first-party data across the entire buyer journey and then aggregating that into one spot and then using that to create audiences. And it shouldn't come as too much of a surprise that at dealer.com, we actually went with option 3 because we're part of Cox Automotive. We're able to have access to first-party data from across the entire buyer's journey. So let's dive into it a little bit as far as the volume of first-party data that we have. So I like to say, hey, you've heard of big data and we've got bigger data. Now this slide, you've got a ton of really big numbers, right? Hey, 19 trillion online interaction events, 2.7 billion online visits, 21 million sales records, 158 million online leads. Great. Like I said, it's just numbers. But we have first-party signals from 3 out of every 4 shoppers out there. So really, as far as the volume of data is concerned, with regards to first-party data, we really have the biggest basket of data that you can use, right? And like I said before, great, you've got a lot of first-party data, but what are you doing with it? Well, let's first talk about how we collect it and how accurate we can get with it, right? So it's actually pretty neat. So this is the consumer journey slide, and really we're tracking people based on devices and mobile networks to create a household, not just an individual. So for example, we've got a consumer who visits a Cox Auto property from their laptop and their mobile device on their home network. That household is identified. And then maybe they go to Kelley Blue Book from their mobile device on a cell network. Because we know that device ID, we connect it to their existing profile and track their behavior and create new predictions on them. And then maybe they go to work and visit KBB on their laptop. Well, we know that device ID. We're going to track that behavior and plug it into their profile, right? Then they maybe visit a dealer.com site on their mobile device at a coffee shop. Once again, we recognize that device. We're going to add that data to their profile. And then they come home, visit Auto Trader or Kelley Blue Book on a new device, right? Their tablet from their home network. Well, we know that home network, so we recognize that device is part of this household. We're going to add that data in. So really, we have these data points across 3 out of every 4 shoppers out there, and we can do some really amazing stuff. But like I said before, it's not all about how much data you have or how you get it. You have to turn that data into information. So this is how we do it. So we're collecting this data, right, across Auto Trader, Dealer.com, DealerTrack, Kelley Blue Book, VinSolutions, Xtime, plus LiveRamp, Adobe, and Axiom, and we're able to do really cool stuff with it. We're actually able to figure out if somebody's interested in leasing or financing a vehicle and how likely they are to buy in the next 30 to 60, 90 days. We know what vehicle they currently own. We understand what vehicles they're researching. We can figure out if they've had a recent life event, maybe they just had a baby, or what their household income is. And we plug that into our identity graph and create a household ID. So, for example, we've got Jill and Steve here. They've got a 2017 Escape. They just had a baby and they're researching the 2021 Explorer. Makes sense, they need a bigger car. They're looking at the price range between 40 and 50K. They got 120K salary and they are ready to buy. They want to buy, really bad in the next 30 days. But great, we created this profile, but how accurate are we with this data? Well, actually very accurate. So we actually put shoppers into buckets like inconclusive, aftermarket, paused shopping, casually browsing, actively shopping, or ready to buy. Once we get them into casually browsing, actively shopping, or ready to buy, we're looking at 4.4 times more likely to buy at casually browsing, 4.9 times more likely to buy at actively shopping, and 11.5 times more likely to buy within 30 days at ready to buy. Pretty powerful stuff. That's actionable information that we can use to target shoppers. But then when we identify the make and model that person's interested in, and we pop them into ready to buy, well, guess how accurate we are in what they buy. So with make, we're accurate on what make of vehicle they buy within those 30 days, 88% of the time. Now with model, we're at 51% because sometimes people will come into a dealership being interested in one vehicle and walking out the door with another. So for example, you've got somebody who's really interested in the Land Cruiser at Toyota, right? Fantastic V8 3-row SUV built to, outlast cockroaches. But the Land Cruiser, right? It is a $90,000 vehicle. Maybe it makes more sense for them to get into a Sequoia, make that monthly payment a little bit more reasonable, right? That's where we're seeing that kind of transition. But at the end of the day, we're incredibly accurate in predicting what people are interested in. And we can use that to target them with the right kind of ads. So like I said, targeting it really is only half of the story. You need to be able to execute effectively. So once we know what those shoppers are interested in, we plug that data into our exclusive buying platform, which uses robotic process automation to actively show those shoppers the right ad at the right time on the right device on the right channel. And we've got the highest level of partnerships across all of these major ad networks, along with exclusive bot fraud prevention technology. So making sure that we're showing ads to real people and not robots, which is a tremendous waste of dealerships' money. Actually, about $6.5 billion is wasted on bot fraud with regards to advertising. So we partnered with Human and the Trustworthy Accountability Group to make sure that ads are being shown to real people. Makes sense, right? And what's crazy is we're going beyond just advertising. Yeah, advertising is great when you know a lot about that shopper and you can effectively target them. But we go beyond that. We're going to give you more tools. So for example, we do website personalization. So we know what that person's interested in. When your site's loading up, we're going to show them customized content. So for example, somebody's interested in the Honda Accord. Well, as your Honda site's loading up, we're going to pull the real Honda incentives and create a custom special for that shopper using OEM compliant imagery. We're going to show them Accords that you have in stock on that homepage. On your specials page, we're going to reorder the specials to show Accord incentives at the top of the page, along with showing those Accord specials on your search results pages, dramatically increasing the time on site that people spend, the number of vehicles they view, and the likelihood that they're going to convert. We also really give you that insight into the shopper through our VinSolutions CRM. So we show you what bucket that person's been put in, ready to buy, actively shopping, casually browsing. We show you what vehicles they're interested in. We show you the price range that they're interested in. So when that person submits that lead, you can actually see all the vehicles that they've looked at on AutoTrader, maybe they're traded on Kelley Blue Book, and the vehicles they've checked out on your website. So your salespeople really have that deal cheat sheet so they can really give that customer the white glove treatment. And beyond that, we can actively target shoppers using our connected video solution, which is something that you couldn't do with third-party cookies. We also have our automated marketing platform, which integrates directly into VinSolutions. So it takes a lot of that busy work out of your salesperson's day by constantly ingesting all of that consumer data and then actively marketing to them by email marketing and building out customized pages on your dealer.com website to land them to increase the likelihood that they reach out to you and buy the vehicle from you. So lots of great stuff happening right now and even more to come. But before we go, we got to talk about privacy. This is, once again, it's a big issue in the online age. More and more people are getting concerned about their privacy. Like I said, more and more consumers, they're considering privacy a pressing issue. We're talking to our friend about waffles. All of a sudden, we see waffle ads everywhere we go. Kind of a creepy thing, right? And the other thing too is every day there's a news story about a big data leak, right? Somebody bought something online and then all of a sudden their credit card information is available all over the world, and somebody in Ukraine is buying Prada slippers using their credit card info. Not a great look. And we're seeing, legislation being introduced, right? California and Virginia have both enacted new privacy laws that basically allow shoppers to opt out of getting their data collected and actually allow them to ask companies to basically delete their data as they see fit, right? And the thing is, a lot more states are actually considering passing this type of legislation. And I'm going to be surprised if the federal government doesn't go ahead and just pass a blanket resolution to protect consumer data in this way. Now, you got to think, okay, well, what's the solution for this? And, here at dealer.com and really Cox Automotive as a whole, we already have a solution in place. And the way that I like to describe it is a shot into the core of the Death Star. I'm a big nerd. We're going to use the Star Wars reference. So really, how we collect data, across all of these first-party sources, so dealer.com, AutoTrader, Kelley Blue Book, VinSolutions, right? They're first-party sources. It's a kind of a hub and spoke methodology, right? So the spokes are all of these websites and services, so DDC, AT, KBB, right? And they're feeding to the hub or the core, which is that consumer profile or that household ID. Now, if somebody requests that any one of those companies delete their data, it's like a shot into the core of the Death Star. So we delete that household ID and none of those other properties have access to it anymore. And this is a tremendous advantage for you, the dealership. It's much more convenient because you don't have to contact a bunch of different vendors to make sure that that consumer's data is deleted. It's all in one shot. So you can cross that off your list and move on to doing what you do best, which is selling and servicing more cars. So you got to think about that, when you're working with a lot of different vendors out there. So let's talk about what questions you should be asking your vendors, right? There's a couple that you want to keep in the back of your head, right? First of all, is how are you addressing the sunset of third-party cookies? Do you have a plan? Many might not, they're just trying to eke it out as best they can for right now, not thinking about the future. And really, it's happening right now. So hopefully whoever you're working with already has a plan. The other thing is, how are you addressing the lack of app tracking in iOS? How are you really addressing identity resolution when this huge well of information or data is no longer available? Finally, how are you protecting consumer data? And also, how are you facilitating consumers being able to delete their data from your databases? So let's get to what questions you have for me. We got a Q&A session right after this. You can also just email me at noah.lee@coxauto Inc. If you have further questions, I'd be happy to hop on a call with you if you'd like. We can dive deep. But really, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me talk for far too long about data, cookies, and advertising.